Shalom Chavrim, I'm Stephen Ben-Nun. You're watching Israeli News Live. It is a world of Ein Shalom. There is no peace in this world, but at least there's voices out there that are willing to tell you the truth. And we now are joined today with Vincent Bruno here in our, not in the studio, but via Skype. But do bear with us. We have been hacked in our Skype program. We've had two other programs where we endured trying to go through this. We've tried several things to fix this. It's not quite worked out as of yet, but we realize it's because they don't want you to hear the voices that we're bringing to you. And Vincent Bruno is probably one of the most important voices that you could be hearing when it comes to Noahide Laws in the years that he's already been doing his research on this subject. Vincent, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Well, Vincent, as you know, listeners, that I have referred you to Vincent's website many times and to his research. If you can show Steve his website, stopnoahidelaw.blogspot.com. And Vincent has a wealth of information on his website. I have used a lot of his research, and we are so happy to have him here today to talk about the dangers of Noahide laws. Vincent, welcome to our studio. And can you please start with, tell us what prompted you to research Noahide laws? How did you even come to that subject?
So what happened was, you always hear conspiracies about Jews. It's always spoken about. People say they're trying to take over the world and all of this stuff. And the argument that you always hear made is that Jews are disproportionately involved in different kinds of social movements, whether it's communism or liberalism or capitalism or ownership of the banks or whatever. The question I always had, is this just individual Jews doing this? Does this have anything to do with Judaism? Is Judaism asking them to do this? You know, is there really a conspiracy or is there not? So I began trying to debate Jews to figure something out about them, and really, is there a conspiracy at all? And I was really looking for something that, it's easier with Islam to see a correlation between the way Muslims behave and what you see in Muslim texts. So it's easier to make that correlation and for it to all to make sense. But what happened was, I started trying to debate Jews, and I would use the Old Testament of the Bible, which is the Torah.
Okay.
And I found that in these debates, it always turned out that, well, the Torah is not really relevant. We don't live like that. We don't follow those laws. Jews live nothing like that. Israel's nothing like that. And it became very hard to make any kind of connection between what I saw in the Bible and what could be happening in the world today in regards to Jews and conspiracies and things like that. So I had a very hard time, and I kept researching, and I came across a website called comeandhear.com, www.come-and-hear.com. And on that website, I found an article called America's New Government Church, or something like that. And in that article, I did learn about these Noahide laws, but I also learned about the Talmud. So, as you know, the Talmud replaced the Torah. It's actually more authoritative than the Torah. It was the oral traditions of the elders or the Pharisees that eventually were written down. And this is like their new holy book. Just like, it's like their New Testament. And when I started discussing the Talmud, I started realizing that things started making a lot more sense, and the Jews that I would debate with seemed a little bit more sensitive about it. They were more guarded about it, and they didn't really enjoy the fact that I was rummaging around in it. So the Talmud, I got the Talmud, and that got me so far. But then I read about these Noahide laws. And I read about Public Law 102-14, which I'm sure that you guys have talked about a lot. And in that law, it says that the Noahide laws are the foundation upon which America was founded, that it is our responsibility to educate the population about the Noahide laws, and that our president will sign an international scroll pledging to use education and charity to return the world to the Noahide laws. So without knowing what those Noahide laws are, you might not even find any offense with this law, or you might not see anything wrong with it. So the question is, what are these Noahide laws? Well, as your viewers know, the Noahide laws are Jewish laws from the Talmud that apply to non-Jews, and the point is that they are obligatory. We must follow these laws. So there are 7 of them, and while some of your viewers might not at first think that they sound all that wrong, there actually are many problems, because these are being defined by Jews, they're not being defined by Christians. This is being defined out of the Talmud. So the first is no idolatry, but that's the Jewish definition of no idolatry. Second is no blasphemy. Third is no sexual immorality. Fourth is no murder. The fifth is no theft. The sixth is do not eat the flesh cut from a living animal. And the seventh, which is the most important, is to set up courts of justice to enforce these laws. Now, again, I know your viewers watch your show a lot, so they would know that the penalty for breaking any of these laws is death by decapitation. So with this Public Law 102-14, it becomes, why was this even passed? How was this even passed? And it also mentions Chabad Lubavitch in their role in spreading the Noahide laws, and it mentions Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson in his role in spreading the Noahide laws. Menachem Mendel Schneerson is infamous for saying that non-Jews had satanic souls, and he went so far as to say that the only reason non-Jews cannot have abortions is because Jews technically own the fetus. The fetus is there to serve Jews, so to abort it is actually a crime against Jewry. So how was this law passed? You know what I mean? Why was it passed? And when you research the law, it was actually passed by only 4 congressmen.
Yes.
Let me just get their names really quickly.
I interviewed Mrs. Lorraine Day. She's a
Yes.
medical doctor, and she's a wife of a Congressman Dannemeyer.
Yes.
And he was there when they did pass these Noahide laws. And as you said, it only passed, they sent everybody home.
Yes.
There is nothing else we're going to do. And it only, after they sent everybody home, they only kept maybe 4 congressmen, I think, over there. And then they secretly passed and signed that into the law. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Vincent, show us the names, of course, or read us the names.
There are Benjamin Gilman, Tom Ridge, who is a big name, Rob.
It's got a little cut in there. This is what happens to us with our Skype there.
I'm trying to figure out what.
If
Can
you
you
can
read them
read
again?
from the second
Because-
name, go ahead and go
Yeah.
from the second name.
Okay, so it was Ben Gilman, Tom Sawyer, Rob Michael. No. I'm sorry. Ben Gilman, Tom Ridge, Rob Michael, and Tom Sawyer. And I know Tom Ridge is a big name. He was involved in, I think he was involved in the Bush administration during. I know he's a big name guy. So it was only those 4 congressmen, and it did have a lot of co-sponsors. I don't know what that means. I've just started investigating that and who they're connected with. And actually, I'll bring that up a little bit later, because when we talk about the 70 gates, what I was saying, I'm going to get to the 70 gates. I was talking about the 225 co-sponsors who were on the bill. I don't know what that means, if they actually looked at it, or was this kind of just like a blind, rubber stamp or something like that.
Do you think these are some kind of organization?
No. This is even like, if you remember, because see, this is what happened to Dannemeyer. I think he had came on and put his name on it, but at the time he didn't realize that was what was going on. And so his wife caught it and had him write a public statement, because once he realized what was going on, I think he wrote a public statement refuting that. But whether I don't know if he was a co-sponsor or not, but I know that he did not realize what was going on at the time. So, but at any rate, what I'm curious about too, that you may discover in your research, as well, Vincent, is that there is a lot of, I am curious to know the characters in behind this that were pushing it. If there were people being paid off, were these four congressmen actually paid off? What did they get for doing what they did? You can't help but wonder, because they're always getting the big kickbacks in the first place, but could there have been something a little bit more sinister that was going on besides that?
Well, I think they all knew that they were doing something wrong. I mean, because they told the Congress that there would be no more voting that day, and then they stuck behind and they passed it. And obviously, it's such an inflammatory law that they knew if they brought this up in general Congress that people would be questioning, because the way the law is worded, people would say, well, what are the Noahide laws? People would ask immediately, they would ask that question. They're not going to just give a blind signature to something that it's such a profound statement, that law. Right. It's a very profound statement, and it's a serious statement, and it carries a lot of ramifications. When you say that Noahide law is the basis upon which the nation was founded, what are you saying? Are you saying that Noahide law is the law of the land? Does it supersede the Constitution? Is it on par with Constitution? Is it executable when you say it's our responsibility to educate the population about the Noahide laws? Can somebody sue the government for not fulfilling that? Could we sue a school for not teaching the Noahide laws? And what is this international scroll that our president is going to sign to usher in the Noahide laws? Is it going to be international law? Where is it going to come from? And have you discussed the UN with your viewers before?
Yes, we did, but we want to hear it from you. But you're absolutely correct, because in the United States, of course, how Rabbi Cohen in United Nations explained on his conference, Noahide conference, there was a question by one Norwegian, I think. And the Norwegian person was wondering, well, how are we going to do this in Norway? We are atheist country pretty much, it's not going to pass. And then Cohen was answering, well, look how we did this in the United States to pass church and state rule. So we just kind of, it's basically admitted he sneaked it in through
education.
Through education. So what does that mean, right?
Well, they knew that it violated church and state then.
Exactly.
They knew that it did violate church and state. And
well, not only did they know that it violated church and state, but the other thing that you have to keep in mind as well is that besides the fact that it violated church and state, it also, if you look at the laws they're passing now, like, for example, they're trying to pass in this law now for decapitation to be legalized. That should tell anyone that's paying attention to what's going on, this is far beyond just an education law. They're setting up the infrastructure to carry out these Noahide laws.
Keep going.
Yeah, they're setting it up all around the world, because if you see, so that Rabbi Cohen, who runs the Institute for Noahide Code, as we know on their website, they list decapitation as one of the requirements. And this is a United Nations recognized NGO. Back in, I think, 2007, they met with the United Nations, and the United Nations set out a proclamation that the Noahide laws are obligatory. That's the word that they used for all mankind. As you mentioned, he said that they got the Noahide laws passed in America through education, but now I just recently uploaded a video and sent it out where he said that their ultimate goal is to have the Noahide laws inserted into all of the UN member bodies' constitutions. So they want the Noahide laws in the constitution of every country. So they have the USA, they have two laws in the USA, Public Law 102-14 and Public Law 103-14, which makes similar statements about the Noahide laws. They have the UN, and I'm sure you've talked to your viewers about the Vatican on two separate occasions. First, they said that the Noahide laws supersede individual freedoms, and then they said that the Noahide laws are incumbent upon all humanity. So they are, like Steve said, they are laying the groundwork for this. And I note Steve just brought up decapitation, so you wanted me to talk about this amicus curiae brief that had been submitted to the Supreme Court. So there is a father-daughter Jewish lawyer team. Their names are Nathan and Eliza Lewin. And let's see if I can find the year quickly. I don't know the exact, 1999. These two lawyers, on the behest of the International Association of Jewish Lawyers and Jurists and the National Jewish Commission on Law and Public Affairs, they submitted an amicus curiae brief to the court. And this amicus curiae brief was actually reviewed by the Deputy President of the Supreme Court of Israel, Rabbi Justice Alon.
Well,
Yeah, it was the Deputy President of the Supreme Court of Israel. His name is Rabbi Justice Elon, E-L-O-N.
This is insane.
this is where the problem is.
Let you finish.
Foreign power.
I mean, of course.
A foreign power dictating American policy.
Right. Can you continue?
Well, they're trying to, and so what they did is this was very clever because it was Brian V. Moore, and it was a case about the electric chair. And should we use the electric chair? Is the electric chair a humane way to kill people because the Constitution defends us from cruel and unusual punishment? So in the guise, now first I want to say that the Lewins have also submitted briefs to the Supreme Court which mentioned Noahide Law. So they're pro-Noahide, this group. They're pro-Noahide Law. They said, this is what they say: a fundamental principle of the Jewish religion tradition is that any society, including a Gentile community, must establish a judicial system to hear and decide civil controversies. Establishment of courts is deemed one of the 7 basic commands that binds all Noahides, for example, non-Jews. So they are in full compliance with this idea that the Noahide laws are mandatory for everyone. So they came forward with this brief, and the idea was that they came under the guise that death by electric chair is cruel and inhumane. And so what they came in trying to say was that if you want to have modes of death which are not cruel and humane, you should look to the Talmud. Mm-hmm. And they lied a lot because they said that the Talmud provides like dignity in death and it's not cruel and unusual. Meanwhile, the Talmud has a lot of inhumane death sentences, such as strangling in a pit of dung, burning out the lower bowels with molten lead,
right.
Smashing in people's heads with clubs. But what they focused in on most, they said the mode of execution, which would be probably the best for America, would be decapitation. And that's very fitting because decapitation is what is prescribed under the Noahide laws. And remember, these are religious laws, so Jews can't just make up any form of execution. They can't really add in substitutes. They're supposed to do it as the law commands. So it was interesting that they lied, and they said that the Talmud says that decapitation is the least defiguring form of execution, whereas the Talmud says the absolute opposite, that it is the most disfiguring form of decapitation.
Well, of course, what's more disfiguring than losing your head? Doesn't that disfigure you?
Yes, right.
Right. This is insane. So what was the response when they have made this proposition? Do you have...
Well, I'm going to get to that, but I do want to finish what they were...
okay.
Sure.
What they were getting at is another thing that they tried to say was that Talmud law is it's very hard to get the death penalty under Talmud law. This is what they were trying to argue.
Wow.
So What they tried to say was, at first they were deceptive, because they said it's hard to convict anyone in Talmudic law because you need 2 witnesses and you are charged by 23 judges. But what they forgot to say is that's only for Jews.
Right.
Only Jews do you need 2 witnesses and 23 judges, whereas for a Noahide, you only need 1 judge, you only need 1 witness, and you can be tried by 1 judge. So that was deceptive.
And just to add, and not only 1 witness, 1 judge, but it can be your family members.
Yes.
As for Jews, it does not apply. Your Jewish family members cannot
be a witness.
But in the case of a Gentile, these are the things. Again, 1 judge, 1 witness, and it can be family members.
Right, exactly. So they failed to say that. They were deceptive about that. And then there's a deception that Jews use all the time. I hear it all the time, that in the Talmud it says that a Sanhedrin that executes a person every 70 years is a murderous Sanhedrin. And they use this in the brief to say, you can obviously see that they're very disparaging of using the death penalty. But in this case, they were very deceptive because they're talking about a very specific case in the Talmud when they talk about that. It's in Makhof 7a. And when they say that a Sanhedrin that executes someone every 70 years is a murderous Sanhedrin, they're talking about a very specific case. They're talking about a case where someone in the land of Israel has committed a crime, has been tried by the Sanhedrin, but then has fled the land of Israel and has now been brought back before the Sanhedrin to be tried again. So the problem, what they're saying, and what happens if the original witnesses to his crime are no longer available, they're no longer there. They said that they would bring in 2 witnesses to the trial, so 2 people who actually saw the trial, and they would cross-reference them and see if they knew things about the trial and if they could get information out of them and use that to reconvict this convict. And in that specific case, the one rabbi said that would be a murderous Sanhedrin. So they lead you to believe that this is the general case, that Sanhedrins don't want to normally execute people. But they're only talking about a very wild case where someone's left, come back, the original witnesses are not there, and then you start asking judges who witnessed the trial, do you remember what happened? And that's obviously a very shoddy way to run a courtroom, I think anyone would see. And so the rabbi said, well, you can't really do that. That's a murderous Sanhedrin. But that's not normally applicable. The Sanhedrin did give out the death penalty in the Talmud. I have a article up about that. It did give out the death penalty. And part of the reason why it didn't give out a lot of death penalties was because the Sanhedrin Israel was ruled by foreigners for a long period of time. I think for almost 400 years of its history, it was ruled by foreigners. And so the Sanhedrin didn't have the right to execute anyone. So that was part of the reason why these executions were diminished. But another very important part of this Mishnah, this law that they brought up about this being murderous, this Sanhedrin convicting someone every 70 years being murderous, that same Jewish law is very important because it says the Sanhedrin has jurisdiction both within and without the land of Palestine. Wow. So what we can see from this case was that they are trying to bring in decapitation as an acceptable form of punishment, replacing other forms of the death penalty, suggesting that it replace other forms of the death penalty, when it's really up for debate as to whether decapitation is more disfiguring or more painful than other forms of execution. Why not lethal injection? Right. It said decapitation because it goes along with the Noahide Laws, and remember, these are Noahide Law advocates, and how that was received. So what happened was, these same team, the Lewins, Nathan and Eliza Lewin, who submitted that brief, the next year, where they held a banquet at the Supreme Court to launch the Institute for Judaic Law, which is stated purpose is to promote the application of Jewish law and philosophy in contemporary society. So that organization is since defunct. It's no longer operating. But the man who started it was a Chabad Lubavitch rabbi. And so Chabad Lubavitch is highly involved in the Noahide Laws. They met with, who did they met with? Let's get their names. Who was there? Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Stephen Breyer, and Antonin Scalia were at the Supreme Court dinner for the Institute, the launch of the Institute for Judaic Law. And each of them, if you go to my website, you'll find it. Both Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Antonin Scalia wrote letters of appreciation for Jewish law. They were, in appreciation of Jewish law. So they were appreciating Talmudic law. President Bush also sent his sincere
like a support letter? Or
so, he said, through the study and teaching of Jewish law and philosophy, you are contributing to a growing culture of service, citizenship, responsibility in America. Right. So that was the response. The response to that brief was that they got invited to the Supreme Court, and they got all these letters of approval from the president, from the Supreme Court justices. So that went pretty far.
Wow. That's deception, what they use, complete deception, which that's the way they're pushing it, by deception. But I want to ask you now, in regards to all of this that you said, you know how President Trump is giving everything to Chabad. You know how Jared Kushner, Ivanka is behind there, right there in the White House. Jared Kushner being in the highest position in the White House as a senior advisor, right? I think that I'm correct on this. And how do you feel about President Trump right now with Pompeo talking about natural law and bringing back natural law? Okay, how do you feel about that? And how do you feel about him appointing 140 or 145, I'm not sure now, judges? They're all supposedly extreme right-wing judges. So how do you feel about this?
Well, with Trump, first of all, his son is Chabad Lubavitch, and his daughter converted to Chabad Lubavitch, and they both went to the grave of Rabbi Schneerson to pray for her father's victory. The Sanhedrin over in Israel, which is not official, however, they did send a letter to President Donald Trump asking him to uphold the 7 Noahide laws. And Public Law 102-14 is re-signed into law every year. So every year Donald Trump has signed that the Noahide laws are the foundation of American civilization. So the idea that he doesn't know what the Noahide laws are is pretty much ridiculous. He must know what they are. Natural law is often used as a euphemism for Noahide law. There is the American Society for Natural Law or something like that. They are a Noahide group, but they present it as natural law. They present it as natural law, they present it as common sense, and something that... Natural law is something that can't be violated. Physics is natural law. Chemistry is natural law. I mean, these laws are up for interpretation. I mean, especially so the question when no idolatry, and who's defining what idolatry is? And we know that according to Maimonides, Christianity is idolatry. So we don't all agree on what is idolatry, so this obviously can't be natural law if it's up to interpretation. Probably when they say natural law, they are being influenced by this Judaic element, because it's not an American tradition to promote biblical law, meaning it's not American tradition to pass laws based on the Bible. so much. We try to have a separation of church and state. So when they're talking about natural law, they are probably talking about the Noahide laws. And as for all of these right-wing judges, we see that appreciation for Jewish law has infiltrated the Supreme Court and even the presidency. And so I am sure that there are efforts within the legal community to brief lawyers and judges on Talmudic law and perhaps even Noahide law, and to influence their thinking, in that direction.
Well, when you look, and I agree with you, and when you look into the behavior of rabbis right now, I mean, it seems like they are speeding up this education of Noahide laws everywhere. They're talking to people. In fact, even on the streets and shopping malls, and like just recently, one of our friends who is a Christian lady, and we had her on several times because she's mom of autistic children, and she is in activism, against vaccines and all of that. So she was just walking with her daughter in a mall, and she was approached from a kiosk of a skincare kiosk in a mall by a Jewish man who called her away a little bit and handed her Noahide law, kind of like a tractate or something, so.
Yeah. Well,
yes.
I mean, there's a lot going on.
Go ahead and respond.
What was the last thing you heard?
Respond from the beginning.
What was the last thing?
Respond from
Respond
beginning.
from the beginning when you were responding to her.
Yeah.
Oh, so, if you just go online and you go to Amazon and you type in Noahide, you're going to see hundreds of books which have been written by the rabbis, which they're promoting. The Zionist government of Israel officially backs an organization in Jerusalem called the Noahide World Center, which is a Noahide conversion center. So the Israeli government is officially in bed with this conversion center, which is publishing books and sending missionaries out to convert people to the Noahide system. And yeah, I've seen here in New York, I've seen Chabad passing out the flyers and the.
One thing I wanted to say on that.
Hold on.
We'll bring it up in a second.
Passing out the flyers.
I saw in New York City, we see Chabad Lubavitch passing out the flyers, and I think that the movement is growing very quickly. They are trying to convert people because they already. How much manpower do they have? How close are they to being able to implement it? I think that they have set it up legally. They're setting up the framework. They have the laws passed in the United States, the UN, the Vatican. I know that you've spoken about Freemasonry on this channel, that Freemasonry in its very inception, from its very founding constitution, said that they are Noahides and they are obliged to follow the Noahide laws. And as we know, Freemasons are obsessed with building the third temple.
Yes.
So it has the Freemasons working for it, and now they are actually going in to Muslim countries, and they are trying to tell Muslims that Sharia is a suitable form of Noahidism, and that they can implement Sharia and they can still be Noahide compliant. Now, that's a lie. That's actually not true. They are just, what I think that they're doing, I'm bringing this back into, they're looking for numbers. So these Noahide converts are important. You always hear Jews say, well, Jews aren't necessarily here to enforce the Noahide laws. We're not necessarily here to force you to do that. Rabbi Schneerson said that the Noahide laws can be forced on non-Jews. But the real manpower is going to come not from Jews, but non-Jews. So the people who would be enforcing these Noahide laws are these converted Noahides, people who used to be Christians or Hindus or Muslims or whatever they are, and who have now been converted. These are the kind of radical people that they would be using. They're deceiving. I think they're trying to swell their numbers by going into the Islamic world and deceiving them and saying, you are Noahide, your religion is Noahide compliant, don't worry about it, let's work together. What I think is going to happen is after they used Islam to their advantage, they're going to turn around and say, well, actually, it's not Noahide compliant. And now once they have enough Noahides, they will outlaw Islam. I think that's the long-term plan.
Wow.
That's
new to me. That's new to me because I thought that they were actually meeting with Islamic scholars and agreed that, like Jewish scholars and Islamic scholars, they agreed that Sharia law is basically Noahide law. But you're saying that, Jews are deceiving. They're deceiving the Muslims, saying that they are compliant Noahides while they will actually turn on them.
Possibly. In the future.
Yeah, because if you read a lot of, I have it up on the website, if you read a lot of halakha, Muslims are considered idolaters. Basically, from my understanding, anything that is not out of the Torah Talmud and is not coming from rabbinical instruction is idolatry.
Now, let me go back to one thing, though, while we have a chance here. You were talking earlier, Vincent, about these attorneys and how that, with what they've been doing, influencing the Supreme Court, etc., and that you believe that they are influencing also other attorneys, probably in the background. Well, I think this is why the whole purpose of being in the education system, and of course, as Trump signed into the executive order about the universities across the United States can no longer speak against Judaism. It's considered the anti-Semitic, I don't know if they call it the anti-Semitism bill or whatever they called it, but it shows there that, yes, they're definitely going to be educating future generations, not only the attorneys and the lawyers and the schools and things like that, which they're already doing now, but then they're going to go to the grade school because Menachem Schneerson said that you start with them when they're born and you bring them up. So they want to take your kids from you, train your kids from birth all the way up. That's why they're pushing the education system. And this is just, I mean, this is really weird. I mean, biblically, I keep thinking, I can't get it out of my head, that power was given unto the beast. I mean, just given to him. And that's what they've done. All the government, even Putin, just gave it over to Chabad rabbis.
Right. Well,
yeah, there is a mysterious power behind this because how are they getting all of these governments and the UN, the Vatican to sign on to this? I mean, it's against the Vatican's own interest. Didn't the Pope ask, what are the Noahide laws?
I know.
Wow. Vincent, did you know that before he became the Pope of Rome, that he was already with the cardinals in South America? He was organizing the trips for them to go to the to Jerusalem, to study in the just outside of Jerusalem, actually, to study in the Noahide Center there, training the bishops and the cardinals in Israel at that time before he became the next pontiff. And I think that's why they chose him and made sure he became the next pontiff, was because he was already working this system. And as a Jesuit, of course, you can't be a Jesuit unless you have Jewish ancestry.
Well, not anymore. It used to be in the beginning, but then, of course, Gentiles incorporated into that. But yes, the current Pope of Rome has a history of sending bishops before even he was a pope to being taught
that guy's name,
the Noahide laws, and it was shown on a website by Maurice Pini.
Yes.
And he has brought all the proofs in there, and we have showed these on our chats. But I want you to keep speaking because you're just very good at.
You're blowing me away.
Yes, you're just very good. You have enormous
wealth of knowledge,
and we just want our listeners to have that treat. So keep going, Vincent.
Yeah, well, the thing that you said is that they want to bring it into the kids. They do this. They do it incrementally. So the official name of Public Law 102-14 is something like Education and Sharing Day. So this Education and Sharing Day was established back something in like 1978 with Carter. And the first ones didn't mention Noahide laws. It mentioned everything else, ethics, Chabad Lubavitch, Rabbi Schneerson, all of these things. But it would evolve over time. Every few years, they would update this education and sharing day, and they would, change the language a bit. And then once they got everything of them talking about ethics and the government and Schneerson and Chabad Lubavitch, then they inserted Noahide Laws at the end. And then it became a Noahide Law package. Schneerson said that Schneerson pushed for a moment of silence.
Yes.
In schools. Mm-hmm. So that's where you start. You start with the moment of silence, and then you slowly build up this education curriculum or these education bills until the population is ready for you to insert the Noahide laws into them.
Right.
So that's basically the way that they're doing it.
Yes, I know, and you probably remember that during this shooting in synagogue, when a particular rabbi was speaking at United Nations, he did mention that moment of silence, and that's what they asked for.
I remember, and because it must have, Vincent, what year was the moment of silence actually officially brought in? Because it seems like when I was in high school, I went into high school in 1979. It seemed like 1979, 1980, somewhere right in there, we were still praying like at a football game.
You are.
But now, yeah, I'm an old guy. Supposed to have gone in earlier, but a few marbles were loose. But it seemed like around 82, when I was going to be ready to graduate, it seemed like there we had to go to a moment of silence, and it kind of threw everybody for a loop. And I remember that.
Oh, wow.
But I want to say that that's when we first saw that, was right around that time. But I'm not sure.
Do you know, Vincent?
Well, it says that he started pushing for the moment of silence in 1983.
Okay, it must have been 83 then. That was my graduation year, 83. So I bet you this is...
Wow.
But I remember it because at that football game that year, they did a moment of silence instead of actually praying, which had always had some preacher come up and pray or something, or Catholic bishop or somebody.
Okay, Vincent, I'm sorry, but keep going. If you don't have a thought right now, let's talk about idolatry, the very first law. And I know we don't share faith. Vincent is not a Christian. We brought him because we have a very common interest in exposing Noahide laws, and I really appreciate Vincent looking out for Christians because
the Noahide
really
laws affect humanity, period.
It is important to say that it affects also non-Christians, not just Christians, right, Vincent?
Yes, yeah, and actually, I did want to talk about. I said I was going to bring up this thing with the 70 gates, and coming from the Hindu world, I do have a different perspective, and I have researched things in another way. I heard you on this show. You've talked about shittuf before.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So shittuf, Jews will try to calm Christians. They say that in Judaism, there's this distinction that they have for something that is not pure monotheism, but not polytheism, called shittuf. And they say that this form of semi-monotheism is permissible to non-Jews. And they say, well, Christianity and its Trinity is considered to be shittuf, but don't worry, shittuf is legal under Noahide law, you don't need to worry about it. Of course, number one, shittuf, there's great debate over whether or not non-Jews can practice shittuf. So that's the first thing. The second thing, I emailed the executive director of AskNoah.org, and according to them, and it correlates with other documents that I've seen, shittuf is only legal in theology but not practice, meaning you are allowed to think this in your head. You are allowed to be a Christian inside your head, but as soon as you go to verbally worship Jesus and to say that Jesus is Lord, you are practicing idolatry. So you're not allowed to practice shittuf. It's a distinction without a difference. So they're trying to deceive Christians and calm them down. Now, they did the same thing to Hindus. The largest Hindu advocacy organization in America is called the Hindu American Foundation. Now, they have always been shady and suspicious since their founding. They started out really powerful with lots of money, lots of contacts, and everyone wondered, how did this get up and started? There was always, and it was always said that there were a lot of Jews involved in its founding. So, in Hinduism, it is a debate over whether Hinduism is monotheistic or polytheistic. To come out, to be a Hindu organization that says that they will speak for all Hindus, to come out and say that Hinduism does not believe in gods or is not polytheistic would be very politically stupid, because you would anger a lot of the population. And it just is not something that normally a normal Hindu group would come out and say. In 2008, the Hindu American Foundation went to Israel to meet with the chief rabbinate. And in an official proclamation, the chief rabbinate said that Hindus believe in one supreme being, that they are not idolaters, and that they do not worship gods. So the Hindu American Foundation walked away with this, look, we're not idolaters and we don't worship gods. We have the official seal of approval from the chief rabbis. So I thought this was really strange. I said, why would they do that? Because they know that that's really up for contention. Right. That we believe in one supreme being, that we don't worship idols, that we don't have gods. So I went in and I read the literature surrounding this, so all the literature that was produced by the affiliated organizations that attended. And what was said at that convention was that Hinduism is not idolatry, only so long as, number one, it is defined in the way the rabbis have defined it for us. So they said, if you define Hinduism this way, it is not idolatry, but it is idolatry in practice. So they were saying, if you follow our definition of Hinduism in theology only, it is not idolatry. But as soon as you go to actually put this into practice, as soon as you set up an idol in your house, or as soon as you go to pray to Vishnu, you are practicing idolatry. This was all framed in reference to the Noahide Laws. They told them that Hinduism must be in compliance with the Noahide Laws.
Well, the same thing is in Christianity, Vincent. It's the same thing. Those rabbis are forming bridges with Christians. They're Christians that form bridges with Judaic rabbis. And I had a debate with Michael Brown, who came with a book proving to me that officially in Judaism, in Halakha, Christians are not idolaters, that there is allowed shituf for the Christians, that they can have Jesus as a mediator, and that's not a threat to Christians. Well, I have brought him, of course, counter arguments. He has brought there is in Judaism, there is this rabbi by name Meir, okay? It's spelled M-E-I-R. And this rabbi lived among Christians, and he did say that Christians are not idolaters, and that that they can have Jesus as a shituf, as a mediator, and that's okay. However, I never read this in their halakha, because when you read Maimonides, and let's not forget, all the Judaic rabbis that spread Noahide laws, they never once cite Meir. They don't cite him. He's not considered important rabbi. He's something on the side. You have to understand that in Talmud and in Judaism, they always debate each other. It's like, two rabbis, three opinions. But then they have this conclusion, halakha, that they go by. You understand? And they go by Maimonides, known as Rambam, and Rambam is also in a picture I think it's in the White House, or do you know where exactly is his picture? I just kind of forgot.
I think that's in Congress.
Congress?
Isn't that right?
Yeah, there's a bust of him.
Yes, exactly. So they have him. They don't have Rabbi Meir. They have Rambam, and then they always cite Rambam, and Halakha goes by Rambam. So
And Maimonides made it clear that Christianity is idolatry.
and Maimonides made it absolutely clear that Christianity is idolatry. Now there are some rabbis like Tovia Singer and some others who are not giving in on their side. They're not forming bridges with Christians, and they're very actively speaking out publicly. There's several YouTube videos that are publicly saying Christianity is idolatry, and it's prohibited under Noahide laws.
It comes down to this, what I noticed, and even with what Vincent is saying here, there's in this movement that these radical rabbis are pushing, there is no freedom of religion. There is no, this is the one thing about America that has made this country so great. Regardless if you agree or disagree with the next religion, you have freedom of religion. And that's what the American people have always respected about this nation. If you want to be a Hindu, you can be a Hindu. If you want to be Muslim, you can be Muslim. If you want to be Jewish, you can be Jewish. Christian, you can be Christian. Whatever you choose from the dictate of your own heart, you can be that. But now we have a foreign power, a foreign government
defining
every religion, what you're allowed to believe, how you can believe, and if you don't believe, you're going to be lined up for the guillotines very soon.
Well, Vincent, that comes to 70 gates, right? That comes to something called 70 gates.
Right, it comes to the 70 gates.
Right.
I just wanted to, in Maimonides, it says that non-Jews are not allowed to invent their own religious systems. And so that's why I'm saying in the end, right now they're telling Muslims you're Noahides, but I know in the end they're going to say, no, it's not. Mm-hmm. And plenty of rabbis have described it as idolatry. So if you go to my website, you will find an article about the unofficial Sanhedrin over in Israel has Noahides come over and pledge allegiance to them as a hereditary hierarchy, and to follow the Noahide laws. And they set up something called the Noahide High Council over here in America, which runs wikinoah.org. And on their website, they have a article about the 70 gates. So what are the 70 gates? You heard that the Sanhedrin is trying to make this 70 nations organization.
Right.
So what they believe is that when Noah and his sons exited the ark, they birthed 70 nations. And so all of the ethnicities and religions and cultures of today are one of those 70 nations. So what they said, and it goes back to what happened with the Hindu American Foundation, what you have to do with the 70 gates is you have religious leaders go with the Jews, and they start defining your religion. And then they define what is acceptable under Noahide law and what is not acceptable under Noahide law. And then they start asking you, they start removing those elements from your religion which are not Noahide compliant. So what you get left behind with is an image of the old religion that seems like the old religion, that seems like the old culture, but it's actually not. It has been Noahidized.
Wow.
And that's...
Yeah, you have explained it so well, Vincent. That's exactly what is going on. And that's what, even in Christianity, and when we come to that shituf, okay, shituf thing, again, I'm just going to go back to that. On your website, when you wrote that, Rabbi, can you read, you have access to it right now, can you read to us his conclusion? Because he very clearly said to you that they're going to, that shituf was a temporary arrangement and they're going to get away with it, and they're working on it now. Can you please read this to us?
Yeah. Okay, I had sent him, so let me just get it. All right, so here's the question I sent him, because I quoted a halakhic text, Likudi Psychos 25, Yud Tes Kislev. Okay, so here was my question. I said, Dear Rabbi, I have a question about shituf. Some say that one may practice shituf as a non-Jew, but is that allowed to go on forever? I think that the ultimate purpose is to eventually negate shituf. Is that not true? And so I quoted this halakhic text which states, "It is, however, obvious that if it will be perceived by them, the nations, also the matter of the negation of shituf, until they even have some recognition of the unity of Hashem, that there's nothing else besides him, this will add both in their carefulness and meticulousness in fulfilling the 7 Noahide laws with all of their ramifications, and also in their aiding of the Jewish people in all their matters pertaining to Yiddishkeit and all other of their needs in general." So here's what the rabbi said. He said, "What rabbinical authority says that it is permissible for a non-Jew to practice shituf? Many people are confused about this issue. The debate among the Jewish sages was only in regards to whether or not belief in shituf is permissible for non-Jews. But even if it is permissible, that false belief excludes the person from being a pious Gentile who acknowledges that God actively controls everything that happens in the physical and spiritual realms. But if a person actively engages in the practice of serving or worshiping the shituf that he believes in, that goes over the line into the realm of idol worship. For example, if a non-Jew believes that events in the world are controlled by the positions of the stars and planets, that belief is shituf, and it is not forbidden for non-Jews, even though it is a false idea. But if the person goes farther and worships a star or planet, for example, by praying to it or burning incense to it or bowing down to it, then it becomes idol worship, which is forbidden. Yes, the idea of shituf will be negated in the future. It is a process that has already started in the world."
Wow, wow, wow. There you go. He just said that, right? And then, so basically replace planets and stars with Jesus.
Right, exactly.
So
exactly. But this 70 gates thing, like what I think the 70 gates is they find what's wrong with your religion first and then they ask you to remove it. So they would probably first ask Christians to remove the Trinity.
right.
They would ask them to remove the Trinity first. And they would keep going with this until they've watered you down.
Right.
Until you're Noahides.
Right. And then, of course, you probably can keep Jesus as long as he is...
As long as he's Jewish and he's Talmudist.
Well, because they have, this Hebrew Roots movement now has Jewish Jesus, and he's only a rabbi. Like, he's not divine. So you can keep him that way. He's a good rabbi. He was a good rabbi, He said some good things. He was a good rabbi. And there is a big movement in Hebrew Roots, especially, that he's not divine. But as soon as you worship him as God, then you worship him and bow down to him and pray to him as God, you are under Noahide laws an idolater. And this is where Michael Brown, and this is where all of these pastors that are deceiving Christians, telling them that this is not true and it's anti-Semitic and it's not dangerous to be under Noahide laws because there is shituf. I think this is extremely deceptive, right?
Yes, this is a big thing that I've been trying to expose because they're doing the same thing to the Hindus in that proclamation in the papers, they made sure to say that, they said, they made the Hindus say that they're monotheists, which is a very inflammatory statement to make. They at that event with the chief rabbinate and the Hindu American Foundation, they made the Hindus state that they were monotheists, and they also made them state that some of the beliefs and practices of other Hindus are still idolatrous. But the monotheism that they were designated with was shituf. So they're not pure monotheists. You have to really get down into the details of what's going on, but they're using this shituf deception with Hindus as well to tell you it's fine, you're not idolaters, but you really are idolaters. They're doing the same thing with Christians. When it comes down to it, this shituf is just a deception. Just, if it's allowable, it's only allowable in theology, but not practice.
That's right. Okay, let's move to some another area. Is there any other area you want to discuss? For example, when I heard you on Adam Green's show, you mentioned that APAC mentioned Noahide laws. That was new to me. I never seen
Yes.
that. Where did they mention?
APAC has said that it is obligatory.
Obligatory.
And on their website, they have said their exact statement was, after Noah emerged from the ark, he received a series of basic religious commandments known as the 7 Noahide Laws, which Judaism considers obligatory for all humanity.
Okay.
So, yes, AIPAC supports the Noahide Laws. United with Israel supports the Noahide Laws. Let me see if there's any other organizations that I can... we know the chief rabbinate over in Israel has given their approval to a book called the Divine Code.
Yes.
I think that... Now, the Divine Code, you know that on my website I detail this. In their references, they reference Maimonides, where he says that non-Jews who do not follow the Noahide law should be killed.
Yes, I have the book. I have the book. We brought it on our web chat several times, and we were reading to people out of that book. So,
well, that book in its margins, in its footnotes, references where Maimonides says that anyone who doesn't follow these Noahide laws should be killed. The chief rabbinate gave their official seal of approval to that book.
Right.
They wrote. There's official letters of blessing, and you can find them on my website. And that book is used by Ask Noah, is the official representative of that book. So they're using that book to promote this amongst the Gentiles. I mean, they don't say it. They didn't come out and say it inside the book, but they referenced it.
yes.
You know what I mean? They're preparing it. They're doing this slowly. They don't want to just come out right out of the gate and say, well, you know, we're going to decapitate you. Except look at Noahide.org. It does list it on their website.
Yes, we have brought that out as well several times to our listeners in our chat. So if they go to playlist, they can see that the Rabbi Cohen, of course, has this on his website as a point number 16, I believe, where he says decapitation specifically. But anyway, in a book of Divine Code, that's a book that writes about sub-laws. A lot of sub-laws are explained, like, for example, about stealing. And it says that for Gentiles, what can bring you capital punishment is even stealing 1 penny, anything worth 1 penny. That's enough. Like, let's say you ate an orange while you worked for Jewish owner, and you ate orange on a job, like you worked for in his orange grove, and then you picked the fruit, and then you just, without permission, you just decided to have an orange. That's a capital punishment. Or anything that you steal worth 1 penny. Already. So.
But Jews need to steal more than 1 penny to be liable for the death penalty.
Right. So it's not even for Jews, that does not apply at all. Plus, Jew can do it to a Gentile. It's a different sets of laws.
Actually, I put that there's in Jewish folklore is called midrash, and in midrash it gives the reason why. They make a reason why Jews are allowed to steal from non-Jews, and what they say is that the God of Israel offered the Torah to all the different nations, and they all rejected it except the Jews who accepted it. So they get this
privilege,
steal-free card. You know what I mean? That they're allowed to steal from the Gentiles, but also the prohibition against murder. There's no liability if a Jew murders a non-Jew.
Right.
There's no.
That's in their books. Yes, exactly, right. And Midrash is by Rashi, I believe. That's another very extremely important rabbi in Judaism, Rashi. But so anyway, when we go to these sub-laws in that book of Divine Code, also a lot of things are open to interpretation. It almost feels like they can add things in there. So if you sign up to Noahide Laws, it's like a blank piece of paper that you're signing, because you never know what they're going to put in, because on a lot of these little petty issues, they're debating still, and they're not decided. You understand?
Yes.
Like they're
Yeah.
not.
Hundreds of sub-laws.
Yeah, hundreds of all kinds of petty issues, sub-laws that they're free, like they feel like they can, the rabbis can get together and they can decide what they're gonna put in. So it is extremely dangerous, all of that's going on. Another book I wanted to ask you if you know about, and I don't think you have it on your website, and I think you should. It's a book by Rabbi Ginsburg, and it says Kabbalah and meditation to the nations. I don't know if you have
I've
it?
seen that on you and Adam Green's. You've read it before. I've seen it.
Right, that's like important. You have so many things on your website. I think that one is just one I kind of advise you to put in, because when you open that book, it's all about Noahide laws. It's a Noahide law book and how it pertains to their Kabbalah, and over there he distinctly makes a difference between Jewish race and non-Jewish race. It's a very racist, supremacist book. It should be actually
Actually, this there's an article on my website where I was showing that both the government of Israel and Netanyahu are involved with this Noahide World Center.
Yes.
They were interviewing these Noahides, and this is not the only time that I've heard this. The Noahides themselves are saying, we have animalistic souls. Our souls only have 3 levels. Jews have 5 levels to their soul. We need Jews to lead us so we're not animals.
Right.
I mean, so these Noahides are actually thinking this themselves.
I think they managed to
They got
persuade.
the Gentiles. They consider Gentiles dogs anyway. So I guess they have the Gentiles on a leash, and they take us for a walk when we want to go for a walk, and then bring us back if they feel like it.
Yeah, well, that's, so basically,
That's nuts.
what I want to say, it's a 2-tier system. It's a 2-tier system. It's not, but they are selling it with a very beautiful language, and it's deception, because they're selling it under peace and security and equality for all and respect for all religion. This is what Cohen says on all of these conferences about Noahide laws. He's selling them under equality for all, peace and security, and so like such a loving thing, like we are all equal, but we are diverse. We are all different, and we have to respect each other. So, people who don't really study it in depth as you do, they might be sold to it, and a lot of Noahide Gentiles, non-Jews, are actually believing. They managed to persuade them that they are of a different species than Jews. You understand? So that's what's sad. That's a sad reality we are in. Now, before we go to conclusion, I would like you, Vincent, to because a lot of people ask me this question, and I am doing kind of like a little research on this. This law on animals, okay?
Yes.
And we know that President Trump just signed that it is a criminal act now to abuse animals.
Yes.
Are you familiar with the latest?
Yeah, I saw that. Yes.
Okay. To me, when these kind of things are signed, I always wonder, is this really for love of animals, or is this something furthering Noahide agenda? Because now you're a criminal, and who defines what does it mean really? What do you do to the... Of course, we love animals. With Steve, we love animals. And everybody, our listeners know, we love them to the point we don't even eat them, So but I still worry when laws like these are passed, because it seems to me like, where is that fine line when you can make something criminal act, and what does President Trump mean?
Well, I think it comes up to the debate about kosher slaughter and standard slaughter. Like everyone, the Jews say the way we do it is cruel and inhumane, and then non-Jews say the way kosher meat is cruel and inhumane. So,
but now it's criminal act. You understand? You can go to federal prison. It's a federal offense now if you mistreat an animal.
Whose form of food slaughter is going to be considered animal cruelty, and whose isn't? I think that's very important. Another thing I wrote about it, it's very interesting. There's these rabbis that are saying that under that we can't eat lab cloned meat because you took a cell out of a living animal and then you cultured it. Oh. So you've technically eaten the flesh of a living animal.
Okay, all right.
It sounds like to me that they're trying to control the economic side of this as well, because there is, of course, people that consume meat. There's a lot of people that are in the, whether it be the dairy industry, the meat industry through cattle, etc. A lot of the Arabic people do this as well. Mm-hmm. So if you can pass these laws here, then you can effectively take away business from a lot of other people that are already making money from this. And now you have the monopoly on all the economic wherewithal of this, including making things from leather, etc., right on down the line. So it sounds like to me it's more of an economic theft.
Yeah, what do you think about that law, particular law?
The law is don't eat the flesh cut from a living animal. So I don't really have a problem with that law.
Well, I don't either. But what's the sub laws, right? That they're gonna come up
right?
with,
What are the sub laws? Right. And right, what I would be concerned about is kosher slaughter going to be considered not animal cruelty, and is non-kosher slaughter going to be considered animal cruelty? I think they would push for that. Right. That they would say that only our way of slaughtering animals is humane.
So basically they're pushing Judaism on the whole world. Their way of thinking, and just Judaism on the world, and it's becoming part of the government now. It's like, so which brings me to say this, that we need to make it absolutely clear that either it's Vincent, Adam, us, or anybody else working on these Noahide laws, we are not against the Jewish people having their religion. Correct, Vincent? They can have their religion. They can believe what they want. And as long as, let's say, there is a synagogue over there and they're going there and worshiping God the way they feel it's right, it's all good. We have no, we are not against them. The problem is when their ways are pushed through the governmental institutions, through the United Nations, through the religious institutions on others. When the way they're doing. This is where the line is drawn.
In a very deceptive way.
And actually in a deceptive way. And now they're like pushing their views on everyone and now making it a law.
Well, they're using anti-Semitism as their platform to be able to justify pushing all these new laws all over the globe.
Right. You're anti-Semite if you against it. You're anti-Semite if you talk, you defend your own faith, and this is where the line is kind of drawn. This is why we're discussing it, because things that are happening are obviously not normal. Do you agree with me, Vincent?
Yeah, no, I mean, yes, and they are using, I would consider the anti-Semitism laws to be, I would consider that under the anti-blasphemy law. I think that's where that's coming from. They're pushing anti-blasphemy laws.
Well, if you're gonna talk against Jew or his religion, it's like talking against God Himself, correct?
Yes.
That's under sub-laws. Yeah. So that way you will be guilty of blasphemy, and you will be violating Noahide law and worthy of death. Another thing is studying their Torah is like adultery law, falls under adultery law in the book Divine Code. I don't know if you're aware of that. That was a surprise to me, but they consider Torah like a wife, So if a Gentile studies Torah, meaning Talmud to depths, he is guilty of adultery, like stealing a wife from a Jew.
You're not allowed to.
So there are some very weird sub-laws in this whole thing.
Yeah, I know. I have on the website, there was it's common knowledge that according to Jewish law, non-Jews who read parts of the Talmud that are not Noahide. We're only allowed to read those parts of the Talmud which apply to us, which are the Noahide laws. But anything else, we are to be put to death if we read them.
Right, exactly. So it will be a very Orwellian, very dictatorial, very strange way of living if we have Noahide laws pushed on us forcefully.
Well, think about one thing here, and I'll just kind of sum this up from my last statement myself. Mike Pence, Vice President Mike Pence, just came out, and when I forget where he was speaking at, but he said that, I'm going to make a statement. He makes a statement that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitic, and he said there's a new form of anti-Semitism that is now brewing. This just came out recently.
Which he did not define.
He didn't define it, but we're kind of sure we know where this is going.
We are afraid that he's meaning that a lot of people are waking up to Noahide laws.
And he said that this form of anti-Semitism must be rooted out of society in every single corner that it's in. So we can see more laws are about to be passed, executive orders, and I have a feeling that it's coming to the internet very soon to silence the people in order to bring about these Orwellian laws.
Right, because we could be, and you're not allowed to suggest that Jews have any conspiracy to take over the world, but the Noahide laws are. That's exactly what it is. So you would get in trouble.
So Vincent, do you have anything else, any other area you want to discuss today? There is so much. We would be here for like 10 hours, but do you feel like discussing anything else in short?
No, I think just what I really want to drive home is the shutuf deception, that don't fall for that. It's debatable whether you're allowed to practice it or not, or believe it or not, but as soon as you practice it, you are practicing idolatry. And keep your eye open for this 70 gates deception, where they're going to start going into the Christian congregations. They're going to find pastors that they'll work with to start slowly removing those elements of Christianity that are not Noahide compliant, and trying to slowly Noahidize the religion.
Vincent, they're already doing it.
Yes,
It's not a future. It's happening. I don't know if you watch our programs. We have a so-called brother in Christ, Messianic Rabbi Shapira, who is saying, that Jews are the mediators between Gentiles and God. And Jews are the light of the world, and that Christians are to leave Christianity and stick to the Jewish people, which the book I'm talking about that you should put up on your website by Ginsburg actually says that we are like a garment to the Jew. Like, because I'm considered Gentile, but because of my mother, only half of my family, is Jewish, so they consider me Gentile. But the basics, that's why I say we. But we are like a garment on a Jew. Like, you understand?
Yes.
You should read this book and write a little bit.
I'm going to.
Okay. Well, Vincent, please, any kind of concluding comments? Thank you so much. Once more, your website, stopnoahidelaw.blogspot.com. I see the year 2025 on your website there on the blog archive. What is that?
I do that. I just do that on purpose so that when you type it in, the first page that you see is the table of contents. I just have it so it's all the way at the top of the...
Oh, okay. Okay.
That's why.
Because there was a question of somebody, like, what is it, 2025, date for? But
I know, everyone keeps asking me, is that some special date, something's going to happen?
I know, yes. Okay. So, but you have so much on there, and everything that Vincent has on his website is proven by facts. He's bringing all the sources. He's not making anything up. It's right from Jewish sources, mostly
Amazing
Jewish sources. So thank you so much
Yes.
for your work. We appreciate your work. We appreciate you coming on our show.